The Galactic Mistake. The conference hall aboard Station Harmony stretched across 2 kilometers of curved transparent steel. Captain Vexthar of the Zephyrian Confederacy stood at the observation deck, watching ships from 89 different species dock and depart in perfect coordination. The station existed at the intersection of 12 major trade routes, a monument to what civilized species could achieve together. Vexthar's crystalline skin reflected the soft blue lighting as he reviewed the data pad in his 3-fingered hand. The Galactic Trade Federation had operated successfully for over 2,000 years. Wars happened, certainly, but they were manageable affairs. Corporations sponsored military actions, territories changed hands, and everyone profited in some way. It was all very civilized. Today's agenda included a special item. A new species had been discovered. The doors to the conference hall opened with a musical chime. Representatives from dozens of worlds filed in, taking their designated positions. The Mantari delegation floated in their transparent liquid-filled spheres. The Thraxian hive mind occupied an entire section with their interconnected seating. The wealthy Carnex Corporation representatives wore their traditional golden armor, a display of their economic dominance. Vexthar moved to his seat as the Federation chairman called the session to order. The chairman was a Velocian, a species known for their diplomatic skills and impressively long lifespan. "We gather today to welcome a new potential member to our Federation," the chairman announced. "A species that calls themselves humans. They have achieved faster-than-light travel and have established colonies in their home system. Ambassador Jackson from Earth will present their credentials." A door opened and 3 figures walked in. They were bipedal like many species in the Federation. Their skin was a uniform light brown, and they wore simple dark blue uniforms. The lead human, Ambassador Jackson, was a woman with short black hair and intelligent eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. "Honored members of the Galactic Trade Federation," Jackson began, her voice clear and steady. "Humanity greets you with hope and respect. We are new to the stars, but we are eager to learn and contribute to this great community." The presentation was standard. Humans had 7 billion individuals on their home world. They had established 3 colonies in nearby star systems. Their technology was adequate but not exceptional. They offered various trade goods and cultural exchanges. What caught Vexthar's attention was a small detail in their historical records. The humans mentioned something called world wars that had killed tens of millions of their own species. They spoke of weapons that could destroy entire cities in moments. "Ambassador Jackson," Vexthar said, raising his hand for permission to speak. "Your historical records mention extensive warfare. How did your species survive such conflicts?" Jackson's expression became somber. "We nearly didn't, Captain Vexthar. We came very close to destroying ourselves. That's why we approached the galaxy with such desire for peace. We know what war truly costs." Several representatives made sounds that their translation devices rendered as polite laughter. The Carnex corporate representative, a bulky creature named Thorn, spoke up. "Surely you exaggerate, Ambassador. War is simply another form of negotiation. It's how territories and resources are redistributed. The Federation has clear protocols that keep casualties minimal and profits optimal." Jackson looked confused. "Profits from war?" "Of course," Thorn explained as if speaking to a child. "My corporation specializes in military logistics. When 2 parties have a dispute, we provide the necessary equipment and services. The conflict is resolved according to Federation rules, territories change hands, and everyone benefits from the economic activity." "How long do these wars typically last?" Jackson asked carefully. The chairman consulted his records. "The current conflict between the Draxian Empire and the Pelter Combine has been ongoing for 63 years. It's very well managed. Casualties are limited to designated military zones, and both sides continue profitable trade relationships with neutral parties." Vexthar watched Jackson's face carefully. Her expression didn't change, but something flickered in her eyes. Something that might have been horror. 63 years, Jackson repeated softly. 3 generations living in war. "Civilized war," Thorn corrected. "There are rules, protocols. It's nothing like the barbaric conflicts you described from your own history." Jackson was silent for a long moment. Then she nodded slowly. "I see. We have much to learn about galactic society." The presentation continued. Humanity was granted provisional membership in the Federation. They would have observer status while they established more colonies and increased their trade relationships. It was standard procedure. Over the following months, human representatives appeared at various Federation stations. They were friendly, curious, and eager to understand galactic culture. They watched several small-scale wars with obvious fascination. Human observers attended a corporate-sponsored conflict between two minor species over mining rights on an asteroid field. Vex Thar happened to be at the same observation deck as Ambassador Jackson during one of these conflicts. The two species had agreed to a limited engagement. 200 soldiers on each side, fighting in a designated zone with approved weapons. The battle would continue until one side surrendered or casualties reached the agreed-upon limit of 30%. "It's like watching a sporting event," Jackson commented. Vex Thar nodded. "Precisely. Both sides will fight with honor, the victor will claim the asteroid field, and the loser will receive compensation for their losses. Very civilized. And if the loser refuses to accept the outcome? That never happens. Federation law is absolute. Breaking protocols would result in economic sanctions that no species could survive." Jackson watched the battle below. Soldiers in protective armor exchanged fire with energy weapons that were calibrated to stun rather than kill. When a soldier was hit, they were immediately teleported to medical facilities. The entire engagement had the feel of a carefully choreographed performance. "Captain Vex Thar," Jackson said quietly, "on Earth we have a saying, war is hell. We learned that lesson through terrible suffering. I hope your galaxy never has to learn it the way we did." Vex Thar's crystalline skin shifted colors, a sign of amusement. "Ambassador, I think you'll find that we've evolved beyond such primitive concepts. War doesn't have to be hell. It can be managed, controlled, and even profitable." Jackson smiled, but the smile didn't reach her eyes. "I hope you're right, Captain." 6 months after humanity joined the Federation, the Chronicles Corporation identified a valuable mineral deposit on Elysium-7, a human mining colony with a population of 50,000. The deposit was technically in disputed territory. The original survey had been imprecise about the exact boundaries. Thorne, the Chronicles representative, followed proper protocols. He filed a territorial claim with the Federation. He gave humanity the required 30-day notice of intent to contest the territory. He even offered generous terms. Chronicles would take control of the mining operations, and humanity would receive 15% of the profits for the next decade. Ambassador Jackson appeared before the Federation Council to review the claim. "The Chronicles claim follows all legal protocols," the chairman confirmed. "Humanity has 3 options. Accept the offer, negotiate different terms, or contest the claim through limited military engagement. Our people have lived on Elysium-7 for 3 years, Jackson said. They've built homes, schools, and families there. We understand the emotional attachment, Thorne replied smoothly. That's why we're offering such favorable profit-sharing terms. Most species in your position would receive only 10%. And if we refuse all options? The chairman looked uncomfortable. Then Chronicles has the right to enforce their claim through military action. Limited engagement, of course. Casualties would be minimal, and your colonists would be safely relocated. Jackson stood silently for a moment. Then she said, "We need time to discuss this with our government." "You have 28 days remaining," the chairman confirmed. The human delegation left the station that same day. Over the following week, every human ambassador, trade representative, and observer withdrew from every Federation station across the galaxy. Human merchant ships returned to Sol System. Human communication channels went dark. The Federation Council found this behavior puzzling but not alarming. Clearly, humanity was struggling with the decision. They were young and inexperienced in galactic affairs. On day 29, with no response from humanity, Chronicles Corporation launched their military action against Elysium-7. Everything was done by the book. They filed the proper documentation. They used approved weapons. They even broadcast warnings to give civilians time to evacuate. Chronicles deployed 5,000 soldiers to the planet's surface. The human colonists had a defense force of 300 poorly equipped militia members. It wasn't even close to a fair fight, but that was expected. Humanity would surrender quickly, negotiate terms, and everyone would move forward. The human militia fought back with desperate courage. They held defensive positions around the colony's main settlement. They used guerrilla tactics that frustrated Chronicles' professional soldiers. But after 72 hours, the outcome was inevitable. The human commander requested terms for surrender. Thorne was pleased. The humans had fought with honor. Now would come the negotiations, the profit-sharing agreements, and the smooth integration of Elysium-7 into Chronicles operations. Instead, humanity went completely silent again. 15 days passed. The Federation Council sent numerous messages to Earth. No response. Human communication networks remained dark. It was as if humanity had simply disappeared from the galaxy. Vexthar found this deeply troubling. He reviewed humanity's historical records again, paying closer attention to their descriptions of warfare. The more he read, the more disturbed he became. Humans had fought wars that lasted years and killed millions. They had developed weapons capable of destroying their entire planet. They had lived for decades under the threat of mutual annihilation. Perhaps, Vexthar said to a colleague, we misunderstood what the humans were trying to tell us about war. On day 16 of humanity's silence, something changed. Sensors across the galaxy detected unusual energy signatures coming from Sol system. Human ships were moving, but not in any pattern the Federation recognized. They weren't forming defensive formations. They weren't positioning for trade routes. They were spreading out across multiple vectors, moving toward destinations that made no strategic sense. On day 17, Vexthar received an urgent message from Federation Intelligence Services. Captain, you need to see this. We've detected 50 human vessels entering Karnak's territory. But they're not heading toward Elysium 7. They're heading toward Karnak's corporate headquarters, their manufacturing facilities, and their military installations. Vexthar felt his crystalline structure vibrate with sudden fear. Send a message to Karnax immediately. Tell them to prepare for... He stopped. Prepare for what? The Federation had no protocols for this kind of military action. In 2,000 years of civilized warfare, no species had ever attacked corporate infrastructure. It was unthinkable. Wars were fought over territories, not against the economic foundations of society itself. Sir, the intelligence officer said, his voice shaking, we're detecting similar human fleet movements toward all Karnax holdings across 34 star systems. They're targeting everything: shipyards, factories, research stations, military academies, supply depots. Everything. Thorne's confident voice came over the emergency channel. This is a violation of Federation law. Human vessels are entering Karnak's sovereign space without permission. We demand immediate... His voice cut off. On every display screen across Station Harmony, the same scene played out in real time. Human warships appeared above Karnak's facilities and opened fire with weapons the Federation had never seen before. No warnings. No demands for surrender. Just cold, efficient destruction. A Karnak's military base that had stood for 200 years was reduced to debris in 4 minutes. A manufacturing complex that employed 40,000 workers was systematically dismantled in 12 minutes. The workers were evacuated by human ships before the destruction began, but the facility itself was annihilated. Vexthar watched in growing horror as humanity demonstrated what war looked like when it wasn't civilized, profitable, or managed. This was war as humans understood it. This was war as extinction of the enemy's ability to fight. The attacks continued for 96 hours. When they stopped, the Karnax Corporation had ceased to exist as a military and industrial power. Every factory, every shipyard, every military installation across 34 star systems had been destroyed. Not damaged, not conquered, destroyed. And through it all, not a single Karnax civilian had been harmed. Every worker had been evacuated. Every city had been untouched. Every civilian ship had been carefully escorted to safety. But Karnax's ability to wage war, to threaten anyone, to enforce claims through military might, was completely and utterly gone. The Federation Council convened an emergency session. Everyone spoke at once, demanding explanations, calling for sanctions, insisting this barbarism could not stand. Then the doors opened and Ambassador Jackson walked in alone. She looked exactly as she had 6 months ago. Calm, professional, wearing the same simple dark blue uniform. She walked to the center of the hall and waited for silence. When the chamber finally quieted, Jackson spoke in a clear, unwavering voice. You asked us to choose. Accept your terms, negotiate, or fight according to your rules. She paused. We chose a fourth option. We removed the threat entirely. The chairman found his voice. You've destroyed an entire corporation. You've violated every protocol of civilized warfare. Your protocols, Jackson corrected gently. Not ours. We never agreed to fight wars according to rules designed to make war profitable and perpetual. We've seen where that leads. We've lived through it. And we will never subject our people to that horror again. Thorne's image appeared on a display screen. The Karnax representative looked like he had aged a decade in 4 days. You could have destroyed our entire civilization. You had the power. Yes, Jackson agreed. But our enemy was never your civilization. Our enemy was the threat you posed to our colony. That threat is now gone. Permanently. Vexthar stood slowly. His crystalline skin showed colors that indicated deep disturbance and reluctant understanding. You meant to teach us a lesson. Jackson looked at him directly. Captain, you told me that war doesn't have to be hell. That it can be managed and controlled. But by making war acceptable, you've made it inevitable. You have conflicts that last longer than human lifetimes. Generations that grow up never knowing peace. That's not civilization. That's just organized suffering. She turned to address the entire council. Humanity learned a terrible truth about ourselves. We're very, very good at destroying each other. So good that we nearly destroyed our entire species. We learned that the only way to prevent war is to make it so terrible, so complete, so absolute that no one ever wants to experience it. That's barbarism, someone shouted. No, Jackson said firmly. Barbarism is creating an economic system that requires war to function. Barbarism is fighting for 63 years over pride and profit. Barbarism is making destruction into a sporting event. She placed a data chip on the chairman's desk. Humanity is offering the Chronicles Corporation full economic assistance in rebuilding their civilian infrastructure. We will pay reparations for property destroyed. We will provide medical care for any injured personnel. But we will not restore their military capability. Ever. The council chamber erupted again. Jackson waited patiently for order to return. When it did, she delivered her final statement. Humanity came to the stars hoping to find peace. Instead, we found war disguised as civilization. We're going to change that. Not through conquest. Not through dominance. Through a simple promise. She paused, letting her words carry weight. Attack humanity or our allies, and we will erase your ability to threaten anyone ever again. Not your people. Not your culture. Just your ability to wage war. Jackson turned and walked toward the exit. Before she reached the doors, she stopped and looked back at Vexthar. You were right about one thing, Captain. War doesn't have to be hell. It doesn't have to exist at all. And we're going to prove it. The doors closed behind her, leaving the Galactic Trade Federation to contemplate a future they had never imagined. A future where war was not civilized, profitable, or manageable. A future where war was simply extinct. The new Galactic Order. The emergency session of the Galactic Trade Federation Council had been ongoing for 14 hours. Representatives from 89 species filled the conference hall aboard Station Harmony, and for the first time in 2,000 years, no one could agree on what should happen next. Vexthar observed the chaos from his seat. The Mantari delegation's liquid spheres bubbled with agitation. The Thoraxian hive mind emitted discordant harmonics that their translators struggled to render coherent. Even the normally composed Velosian chairman looked overwhelmed by the shouting, clicking, and electronic screeching that filled the chamber. At the center of it all stood Ambassador Jackson, waiting with the same calm patience she had shown since returning to the station 3 days after humanity's devastating attack on Chronicles Corporation. Order, the chairman finally shouted, his voice amplified to override the cacophony. We will have order, or I will clear this chamber. The noise gradually subsided. The chairman's face showed exhaustion and something else. Fear, perhaps. The comfortable certainty of 2 millennia of civilized warfare had been shattered in 96 hours. Ambassador Jackson, the chairman said slowly, you have been recalled to address this council's concerns. Multiple member species have demanded that humanity face consequences for violating every established protocol of military engagement. Before we proceed with formal charges, you will be given the opportunity to explain your species' actions. Jackson stepped forward. Behind her, a holographic display activated, showing images that made several representatives shift uncomfortably in their seats. Thank you, Chairman. I will explain, but first, I need you all to understand something fundamental about humanity. We are not like you. We did not evolve into space peacefully. We clawed our way here through rivers of our own blood. The holographic display showed ancient humans fighting with primitive weapons. Stone clubs, metal swords, projectile firearms. The images progressed through millennia of human conflict. For 10,000 years, we fought each other over everything. Territory, resources, religion, ideology, and sometimes for no reason at all except that we were different. We became extraordinarily efficient at killing our own kind. The images shifted to more recent history. Trenches filled with dead soldiers. Cities reduced to rubble. Mushroom clouds rising over population centers. 300 years ago, we developed weapons capable of destroying our entire civilization. We called them nuclear weapons. We built tens of thousands of them and pointed them at each other for decades. Any conflict between our major powers would have ended all human life on Earth. A species representative whose name Vex Thar couldn't pronounce spoke up. Yet you survived. How? Through terror, Jackson answered simply. We created a doctrine called mutually assured destruction. If anyone launched their weapons, everyone would die. The only way to prevent war was to make war mean the end of everything. It was the most horrible, terrifying period of human history. But it worked. We didn't destroy ourselves. She paused, letting that sink in. We learned that war cannot be civilized. War cannot be made acceptable. Because once it becomes acceptable, it becomes inevitable. And inevitability leads to extinction. Thorne's image appeared on a communication screen. The Carnex representative had been broadcasting from a temporary facility since his corporate headquarters had been destroyed. His usual confident demeanor had been replaced by hollow exhaustion. You speak of extinction, Ambassador. You destroyed my entire corporation's military and industrial capacity. 40,000 facilities across 34 star systems. 2 centuries of construction gone in 4 days. If that's not barbarism, what is? Jackson turned to face Thorne's image. Did we harm your civilians? Thorne hesitated. No. You evacuated every facility before destroying it. Did we attack your cities, your homes, your cultural centers? No. Did we occupy your territory or demand surrender of your sovereign worlds? No, Thorne admitted quietly. Then we did not attack your civilization. We attacked the threat your corporation posed to our colony. That threat no longer exists. Your people are safe, your culture is intact, and humanity has offered full economic assistance to rebuild your civilian infrastructure. What we will not do is allow you to rebuild the capacity to threaten anyone ever again. A smaller species representative stood up. Vex Thar recognized him as Ambassador Kellis of the Prion Collective, a species whose worlds had been conquered and reconquered by larger powers 7 times in the last 3 centuries. Ambassador Jackson, Kellis said, his voice carrying a tremor, my people have endured civilized warfare for generations. We have followed every protocol, accepted every negotiated settlement, and lost more territory with each conflict. Are you saying there is an alternative? Jackson's expression softened. Yes, Ambassador Kellis. There is an alternative. It's called deterrence through overwhelming response. Make the cost of aggression so absolute that no one dares attack. Not because they are honorable, but because they are terrified of the consequences. The chamber erupted again. Multiple representatives shouted over each other. The Draxian Empire's military commander, a species currently engaged in their 63rd year of war with the Pelter Combine, stood and pointed accusingly at Jackson. You propose replacing 2,000 years of civilized conduct with barbaric terror. You would have us return to the savage ages. No, Jackson said firmly. I'm proposing we move beyond the savage ages you're currently living in. Commander, your empire has been at war for 63 years. How many of your soldiers have grown old never knowing peace? How many families have sent 3 generations to fight in the same conflict? How many resources have been wasted on a war that benefits only the corporations that supply both sides? The Draxian commander's facial structure shifted in a way that indicated confusion. But the war is civilized. Casualties are minimal. Protocols are followed. And the war continues, Jackson said. Endlessly. Profitably. Sustainably. You've created a system where peace is more disruptive than war. That's not civilization, Commander. That's institutionalized violence. Vex Thar stood up. His crystalline skin reflected the chamber's lighting in complex patterns that indicated deep thought. Ambassador Jackson, I've studied your species' history extensively since the Elysium 7 incident. You describe wars that killed millions, destroyed entire continents, and nearly ended your species. Yet you claim our approach is worse. Yes, Captain Vex Thar, Jackson said, meeting his gaze. Because our wars, horrible as they were, eventually ended. We learned from them. We grew beyond them. Your civilized warfare never ends. It just continues at a manageable level, generation after generation, creating a galaxy where war is normal, expected, and economically necessary. She activated another display showing economic data. I've analyzed your Federation's economy for the past 500 years. 43% of your industrial production is dedicated to military purposes. Weapons manufacturing, ship construction, defense systems, and military logistics. That's not a civilization, that's a war economy that occasionally pauses to pretend it's at peace. The chairman studied the data with growing discomfort. Surely you're misinterpreting these figures. I'm an economist by training, Chairman. These figures are accurate. Your entire economic system is built on the foundation that wars will continue indefinitely. Corporations like Chronicles profit by providing military services. Manufacturers profit by supplying weapons. Insurance companies profit by selling protection. You've created an economy that needs war to survive. Ambassador Kellis spoke again, his voice stronger now. Then humanity offers an alternative? Jackson nodded. We propose a new doctrine for the Galactic Trade Federation. We call it mutual assured peace. Any species that initiates military aggression against another member will face complete elimination of their military and industrial capacity. Not their civilization. Not their people. Just their ability to wage war. And who enforces this doctrine? The chairman asked. Humanity? You would make yourselves the galaxy's police force. We would make ourselves the galaxy's deterrent, Jackson corrected. We don't want to rule anyone. We don't want territory beyond what we already claim. We don't want tribute or submission. We simply want to ensure that war becomes so costly that no rational species would ever choose it. Thorne's image flickered as he leaned forward. You've made an example of Chronicles Corporation. You've shown the galaxy what happens when someone threatens humanity. But what happens when someone threatens a species that isn't humanity? Will you protect them too? Yes, Jackson said without hesitation. Any species that joins our mutual assured peace agreement will be protected. Attack them and face the same response Chronicles faced. Complete, absolute, and permanent elimination of military capacity. The chamber fell silent. Every representative understood the implications. Humanity was offering to fundamentally restructure galactic civilization. No more profitable wars. No more managed conflicts. No more civilized destruction. Just peace, enforced by the terrifying promise of overwhelming retaliation. Ambassador Kellis stood again. The Prion Collective wishes to be the first to sign this agreement. We have suffered under civilized warfare for 3 centuries. We choose humanity's terrifying peace over continued civilized suffering. Within moments, 12 other smaller species representatives stood up, declaring their intention to join. Then 20 more. Then 35. The smaller species that had been prey for larger empires, that had followed every protocol and lost every negotiation, saw an opportunity they had never imagined. The larger military powers watched in growing alarm as their traditional victims aligned themselves with humanity's protection. The Draxian commander stood abruptly. This is unacceptable. You cannot restructure the entire Federation based on threats and intimidation. We're not restructuring the Federation, Jackson said calmly. We're offering an alternative. Species can continue following traditional protocols if they choose. But if they attack anyone under our protection, they will face consequences. Not negotiated settlements. Not compensated losses. Complete military elimination. Vexthar found himself speaking before he had fully formed the thought. The Zephyrian Confederacy wishes to understand this doctrine more completely. We have been a military power for 5 centuries, but I have reviewed human history. I have seen what you survived. Perhaps there is wisdom in your approach that we have failed to recognize. The chairman looked at Vexthar in shock. The Zephyrians were one of the Federation's founding species, a cornerstone of the traditional order. Captain Vexthar, surely you don't support this radical proposal? Vexthar's crystalline structure shifted through several colors before he responded. Chairman, I have served in 7 wars. I have followed every protocol, honored every treaty, and watched those wars continue for decades. My grandchildren are now fighting in conflicts that began before I was born. Ambassador Jackson is correct. We have not created civilization. We have created sustainable warfare. Perhaps it is time to try something different. Over the following hours, the Council debated humanity's proposal with increasing intensity. Some species supported it immediately. Others demanded modifications. A few, mostly those with significant military-industrial complexes, rejected it entirely. Finally, Jackson held up her hand for silence. I understand this is a fundamental change. I understand some species will resist. So humanity offers this. We will protect any species that requests our protection. We will not force this doctrine on anyone, but we will enforce it absolutely for those who join us. Choose civilized warfare if you wish. Just understand that if you attack our allies, you're choosing something else entirely. The vote was called. 47 species immediately signed humanity's mutual assured peace agreement. 15 more requested time to consult their governments. 23 species, mostly larger military powers and corporations, abstained. Only 4 species voted in outright opposition. The chairman looked at the results with an expression of profound uncertainty. This council is adjourned. We will reconvene in 30 days to finalize the terms of these agreements. As the representatives filed out, Vexthar approached Jackson. Ambassador, may I speak with you privately? They moved to a quiet observation deck overlooking the docking bays. Ships from dozens of worlds came and went in the carefully coordinated dance of interstellar commerce. You've changed the galaxy today, Vexthar said quietly. Whether for better or worse, history will judge. Jackson smiled sadly. Captain, we didn't want to change anything. We just wanted to be left alone to build our colonies and explore the stars. But when Chronicles attacked Elysium 7, we were faced with a choice. Accept your system of perpetual managed warfare, or show you what real war looks like. And now we hope we never have to show anyone again. The goal isn't to fight wars, Captain. The goal is to make war so terrible that it never happens. That's the lesson we learned from our own history. That's the gift we're offering the galaxy, even if it looks like a threat. Vexthar was silent for a long moment, watching the ships. Finally he spoke. The Zephyrian Confederacy will formally request membership in your mutual assured peace agreement. We have been a military power for too long. Perhaps it is time to learn what peace actually means. Jackson extended her hand in the human gesture of agreement. Vexthar carefully took it, his crystalline structure adapting to avoid cutting her skin. Welcome to the new galaxy, Captain, Jackson said. Where war doesn't exist because everyone is too terrified to start one. Is that really peace? Vexthar asked. Jackson looked out at the stars beyond the station. It's the only kind of peace humanity knows how to build. We hope, with time and cooperation, we can all learn to build something better. But first we have to survive. And survival means making sure no one ever wants to fight. 3 months later, the transformation of galactic civilization was well underway. 62 species had joined humanity's mutual assured peace agreement. Human military advisors were stationed at defense installations across 200 worlds, not to command local forces, but to teach the principles of overwhelming deterrence. The corporations that had profited from civilized warfare found their business model collapsing. Without sustainable wars, weapons manufacturing declined. Military logistics companies folded. The entire economy that had been built on managed conflict began to restructure itself around actual peace. Not everyone accepted the changes peacefully. The Korath Dominion, a powerful empire that had expanded through 3 centuries of civilized conquest, refused to acknowledge humanity's doctrine. They launched a traditional military action against a minor species that had joined the mutual assured peace agreement. The human response was immediate and absolute. Within 72 hours, the Korath Dominion's military capacity ceased to exist. Every shipyard, every weapons factory, every military academy was reduced to debris. As with Chronicles, not a single civilian was harmed. But the Dominion's ability to threaten anyone was permanently erased. After that, no species challenged the new order. Ambassador Jackson stood in the same conference hall where she had first presented humanity's credentials 18 months earlier. The chamber looked the same, but everything had changed. The Galactic Trade Federation has operated for 2,000 years on the principle that war can be civilized, she said to the assembled representatives. Humanity spent 10,000 years learning that war cannot be civilized. It can only be prevented. Today we have proven that prevention is possible. She gestured to the data displayed around the chamber. 43 ongoing conflicts have been resolved in the past 3 months. Not through negotiation, not through protocols, but through the simple understanding that continuing those wars would result in military annihilation. That's not the peace we hope to find in the stars, but it's the peace we know how to build. The chairman, who had initially resisted humanity's approach, spoke with reluctant acceptance. Ambassador Jackson, humanity has been granted full voting membership in this federation. But I must ask, what happens now? You've eliminated war through the threat of overwhelming violence. How is that different from tyranny? Jackson smiled. Because we don't want to rule you, Chairman. We don't want your territory, your resources, or your submission. We just want to be left alone to build our civilization. And we're willing to ensure everyone else can do the same. That's not tyranny. That's just mutual respect, enforced by mutual terror. Vexthar stood up, his crystalline structure showing colors that indicated determination and hope. The Zephyrian Confederacy has formally dissolved its military conquest divisions. We are restructuring our economy around trade, research, and cultural exchange. For the first time in 500 years, our children will not be trained as soldiers. They will be trained as explorers, scientists, and artists. This is the gift humanity has given us. Ambassador Kellis of the Prion Collective added his voice. My people have known only defeat for 3 centuries. Now we know protection. Now we know that no empire can take our worlds without facing consequences so severe that no rational being would attempt it. Humanity calls this terror. We call it hope. Jackson looked around the chamber at the representatives of 89 different species. Some still looked uncertain. Some looked resentful. But most looked relieved. The burden of perpetual war had been lifted, replaced by the promise of enforced peace. Humanity don't wage wars, Jackson said finally. We annihilate threats. Completely. Permanently. Absolutely. We do this not because we are cruel, but because we learn through terrible experience that half measures only prolong suffering. When we are forced to fight, we ensure the threat ends forever. Not the civilization. Not the people. Just the threat. She paused, letting her words echo through the chamber. That's the galaxy we're building. One where aggression means extinction of military power. Where war is not civilized or managed, but simply impossible because the cost is too high. Where peace exists not because everyone is good, but because everyone is too terrified to be evil. The chairman stood slowly. Then let history record that on this day the Galactic Trade Federation entered a new era. Not through evolution, not through enlightenment, but through the harsh lesson taught by humanity. War is not a tool of civilization. It is civilization's greatest failure. And from this day forward, failure will no longer be tolerated. The session ended. Representatives dispersed to their ships, carrying the message back to their home worlds. The age of civilized warfare was over. The age of mutual assured peace had begun. Vexed found Jackson on the observation deck again, looking out at the stars. Do you think it will last? He asked. This peace built on terror? Jackson didn't turn away from the view. Captain, humanity lived under the shadow of nuclear annihilation for 70 years. Every day we woke up knowing that war meant extinction. And that terror, that horrible understanding of what we could do to each other, gave us 70 years of the most peaceful period in our history. No major powers went to war because everyone understood the cost. But you still had conflicts. Small ones. Manageable ones. Nothing that threatened our species' survival. That's all we're offering the galaxy, Captain. Not perfection. Not utopia. Just survival. The rest you'll have to build yourselves. She finally turned to look at him. Humanity came to the stars carrying the burden of our violent history. We hoped to find species who had evolved beyond what we were. Instead, we found species who had never learned what we learned. So we taught you in the only way we knew how. Through overwhelming, undeniable demonstration of what war actually means. Vexthar's crystalline structure glowed softly in the station's lighting. And now we hope we never have to teach that lesson again. The goal was never to fight. The goal was to make fighting unthinkable. If we succeeded, then maybe, just maybe, the galaxy can finally build the civilization you always thought you had. They stood together in silence, 2 representatives of different worlds, watching ships come and go in patterns of peaceful commerce. Behind them, the Galactic Trade Federation continued its work, restructuring 2,000 years of tradition around a simple human truth. War cannot be civilized. It can only be prevented. And prevention, humanity had proven, requires nothing more than the absolute certainty that aggression means annihilation. Not of civilizations. Not of peoples. Just of the capacity to threaten others. In that certainty, a new galaxy was being born. One where peace existed not because everyone wanted it, but because everyone feared the alternative. It wasn't the peace anyone had hoped for, but it was the peace humanity knew how to build. And in a galaxy that had known 2,000 years of civilized warfare, even terrifying peace was better than the sustainable suffering that had come before. The age of humanity had begun. Not through conquest, but through the simple promise. Threaten anyone and we will erase your ability to threaten again. It was enough. It had to be enough. Because the alternative was the extinction that humanity had narrowly avoided and that the galaxy had never imagined. Now they all knew. And knowing changed everything.